Yeah, thanks for sharing that story too. And I'm curious, you said you kind of went through a stage a little bit where your grades started to decline and you started to kind of rethink, hey, is this for me? Is this not for me? Then you had a conversation with your parents, but like, what do you think led towards it? Was it just difficulty? Was it difficulty with the courses? Was it kind of the environment? What were some of the things that you feel like led towards maybe a shift in priorities for you at that stage?
I just, engineering is again, a wonderful, all my friends are engineers basically. And I just struggled with the theoretical all the time. And there never seemed to be a person or empathy or the ability to look at someone and kind of get them. I mean, that's kind of a gift I have, is the connectedness, the relator, to be able to see an individual and to be able to kind of, that's what charges me. And not that engineers aren't people focused, but a lot of the engineering work is more problem focused. And as you get into higher and higher level engineering, you have to be smart, you have to be disciplined, and you have to love solving problems. And it got to the point where I wasn't loving it anymore. And I couldn't fake it. I've never been good at faking. And that became kind of the turning point for me when I just struggled. And it's not like I wasn't smart enough. It just wasn't me. And it's too hard of a curriculum to fake it. Mm. I have tons of respect for my engineering friends, super smart people. And I couldn't fake it.
Now, you had that conversation, your parents said, stay there, figure it out. Did you end up graduating with an engineering degree, or did you end up switching things around?
I actually, at the time, Michigan Tech had a pretty cool degree called Operations Management, which is now MLM, which is now it's supply chain. And you had the ability, like at Michigan Tech, you had, to graduate with a business degree, you have to have a full year of programming, you have to have calculus, full year calculus, full year physics, and I had all that done. So switching over wasn't that big of a deal. And it was a little bit more of a technical degree. And it was mainly more of, at the time, choosing a degree that was in business and my stuff transferred over fairly simply. And so that helped me. I wasn't really an accountant. I wasn't a finance person necessarily. So it was kind of, I don't want to say it was by default, but it was probably the best choice, and stay at Michigan Tech.
Yeah, we'll get into a little bit of this later. I don't want to jump too far forward, but as we get into some of your career and some of the positions that you've had over the years, even leading into before what you're doing right now, you can tell that there's a people component in a lot of those, right? You look through some of those past positions, and even just understanding what you were doing, you would lead individuals in a very intentional way, and empathy probably came up multiple different times throughout those conversations and through those roles.
That is true.
Which was awesome to see. And just connecting that back to early on in college, you realized that people were a big part of what you wanted your future to be like, which has me thinking a little bit, as we get into the first couple roles that you had and on your journey towards your definition of success, were there any like aha moments throughout those early years of your life that you're like, okay, that was something, maybe that's one of them in college, but maybe there's others that you think back to as like, man, if I would have made this decision, I would have gone in a completely different trajectory than where I am today.
Yeah. And I think of decision points. The funny thing at the time, like going to college wasn't even an option. It's just, that's what you did. So for me, it wasn't a big decision point. I knew I would go to college. I think probably the biggest decision point, was when I first got out of college, is when I was going to take my first job. And a lot of my friends went to Detroit because that's where they were from. And I chose to try to look somewhere else. I wanted to go to Minneapolis, maybe Chicago. And it was to kind of chart a path maybe that was different, and which, again, is kind of against what you just talked about. I like to be around people, friendships, relationships. And I chose not to do that I'm not saying that was a great decision, but that was my decision. And I ended up in a steel company in like Northwest Indiana. And that was probably my first choice from a career perspective. Not a great choice in the sense that I learned a lot. That's where I met my wife, was in Chicago through some friends. So a lot of good things happened from that. I don't know if it was a great career choice, but that was it.
Yeah.
And that was I would say that was a pretty big one for me.
And what was that role?
I was, believe it or not, I was a programmer.
Okay.
So I joined. I was. They called at the time. They called it a business analyst, and there was a tool called SaaS, which is not software as a service necessarily, but it was SaaS. It was basically I pulled data out of this huge database to help my department, which was a bunch of people scheduling a steel mill. So I was kind of the business data analyst. So I literally, kind of to your point where I loved people and that connection. And guess what? My first job was a programmer. Great decision. Imagine that. I mean, I programmed for almost 7 years. I stood behind and I know a lot about pulling data out and making reports and building systems and stuff, which was kind of a weird thing for me, but it didn't get better. By the way, my career didn't feel better or get better until I finally extricated myself from that. But I did that for 8 years.
Why'd you do it for 8 years?
Because I was good at it. I mean, I was in a steel mill. The average age was 47, and for those 4 years, I actually almost 5 years, I was the only person who knew how to use a computer in the department. And I was good at it. And I remember at the time, my mom did, but my dad never really loved his job. Career was just a paycheck. It was a way to make a living, and he worked hard at it, but he didn't love it. I didn't think you had to love your job. So I did it mainly because it was a job, and it paid me pretty well, and I got to do stuff on the weekends, and I met my wife, and I ended up going through grad school, on the side. I was going at night because I love to learn. And so there were a lot of positive things going on in my life, but work was just work. And then when I left grad school and actually came to West Michigan, I literally got a job because I knew how to get data out of systems and share it with people. So I did almost the same job, but in a more of a manufacturing environment. And that was for about 3 years. So roughly it was about 7 years. I started my career as a programmer. I always, again, still had that feeling like, gosh, at the end of the day, I was tired, staring at a tube and solving problems with code. I could do it. It just wasn't, I didn't look forward to it.
And because of maybe some of the things that you experienced growing up, where you mentioned about your father, about how he, maybe enjoyed his job, but it was a job for him and he didn't love it, right? And maybe you jumped into that first position. It's kind of, this is the way it is. This is what's, expected of me. So I'm going to do it, and I'm good at it, but I don't love it. But that's okay. At what point did that shift for you where you're like, hey, maybe I want to go find something that, I'm a little bit more passionate about?
Well, and I had an opportunity while I was doing that. Technology and training was just coming into vogue. And I started doing a few projects as part of my role since I understood the technology. And I did have a teaching heart. I started getting onto that technology and training, so doing some online. And I wasn't online learning at the time, but it was more computer-based learning at the time because there was no such thing as a network, really. Or not like we know it today, which kind of dates me. But I started doing that, and then that actually led to my first, someone within a training department of a corporation, a guy named Roger, and he saw something in me and he needed some help. He pulled me out of that job and then pulled me into a training organization, still focused on technology, but now closer to that, the hub of who, in a corporation, the teachers are in the training department. Mm-hmm. And so that was actually a pretty big career move for me because it actually got me into an area that I could begin to see and grow and get excited about some other projects. And so over the course of probably 4 or 5 years, I little by little started taking on more and more teaching, coaching type roles. And that was really the turning point. And it was at that point that I kind of realized that you can love your job. And it's actually easier to do your work if you love it. That's not to say that sometimes you don't have to suck it up and do your work. But I began to see, this is fun. And from that point on, that's kind of led me to where I am today.